What's up, everybody? Welcome back to PowerTech with your solution engineers. I'm one of your hosts, Justin McKean, here for episode 12, where we're going to be talking about unified insights, enrollment analytics. What is it? What does it do? And how does it help? Excited to have Zach Worthen with me today to talk about and give us more insights into this application and all the things that it can do for you at your district. So Zach, go ahead and take a couple of seconds and introduce yourself.
Hi, pleasure to be meeting all of you. My name is Zach, as Justin just introduced. I'm one of the solutions engineers on the Enrollment Analytics tool. I come to PowerSchool by way of the Who Knew It acquisition. And before that, I've worked at a couple different major American school districts doing budget work, enrollment analytics, and curriculum work at Portland Public Schools in Portland, Oregon. And before that, at the New York Department of Ed in New York City.
So one of the cool things about Zach is he is a practitioner, as you've heard on the show many, many times. A lot of us have done the hands-on work, then we joined PowerSchool to try to, impact again larger than maybe what we were doing in our own little personal worlds. So I'm excited to have him because he's not only going to be able to talk to us about what the application can do, but he's going to be able to provide that firsthand experiences. So for those of you that are wondering what is enrollment analytics, Zach, why don't you give us just a quick overview of what the application is and what it can do at a high level?
Absolutely. So what the Enrollment Analytics platform is it's really kind of synthesizing two major pieces that are going to really affect district enrollment. We're looking at the geovisual mapping of the students, put simply where those students are, what schools they attend, where they live, how far they travel, a lot of that information that's super relevant to districts. And then maybe most importantly, we're looking at those enrollment projections. What we do is we provide long-range enrollment projections with a bunch of different scenarios and information to help districts with their long-range planning, especially focusing on the facilities and the budget planning. A lot of that stuff that needs a few years headway to really make sure that districts are properly set up every fall when their students show up.
All right, so you gave us a lot to think about, geovisual mapping, understanding where students are going. What are the benefits for a district that might be sitting there thinking like, okay, that all sounds great, but what are the benefits of actually having our ducks in a row when it comes to knowing all this information?
Absolutely. Well, let's start mostly by talking at least first about the enrollment projections. Enrollment projections for those students are some of the most important, both short-term and long-term planning tools for folks in any district office. Especially we address personally those people in budget and finances, as well as those people in facilities. We had an expression at some of the districts that I'd worked at that money follows the students and teachers follow the money. One of the most important steps in a district every fall and winter is figuring out what those buildings are going to look like and how you're going to staff those buildings. None of that work is possible without comprehensive and really smartly done ironclad enrollment projections for that following year. So what we do is we work with a lot of different factors that maybe districts don't have the bandwidth to do. Their residential development, historical trend lines, and our own proprietary algorithms, which help us give not just those one-year projections, so districts can look to staff for the following year and can look to make sure their buildings are properly sized and facilities are set up for the following year, but also those 5 and 10-year time horizons, which can be really informative for things like long-range curriculum planning, collective bargaining, and those other things that are always going to be top of mind for someone like a CBO or a assistant superintendent of business in a district.
Right. And, I like that because I can speak firsthand, right? At my school district here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, we're growing pretty quickly. And, I'd be lying if I didn't say I was disappointed at how some of like the quality of some of the buildings that my daughters had to go to school in, or the fact that, this year she's still in a building with kids everywhere without air conditioning, with COVID, all the things going on. The school was trying to be prepared, but I don't think they were as prepared to accommodate and adjust. And this is the kind of stuff that Zach's talking about, and when he was going through there, just know that we also consult. That's one of Zach's key components is he could have helped my home school district really get their ducks in a row so that they're providing that firsthand experience. So it's not just about you looking at these applications, understanding what they are, but knowing that you have folks like Zach that are going to be there to consult with you to make sure that you understand. So we've kind of talked about the product at a big level. You understand what it is. You understand some of the benefits of what it can provide you. Now we're going to peel back the layers a little bit and start talking about two of the components. Two of them are just mapping, understanding where the houses are and how the district is aligned. The second component of that is looking at the projections, starting to understand where are their developments, how do we maybe want to tweak the lines a little bit to make sure that there's an equal balance? Let's start with just the mapping component though. So Zach, talk about how two things, like what is key about the mapping component? I think it's relatively straightforward, but what are some of the benefits of having this information in a visual location? I think a lot of districts that are listening here, they've got boundaries and they have them mapped out in their student information system, but there's no maps. They've just typed in boundaries in fields and then things are set up all behind the scenes. So bring to light, what's the value of actually seeing this information?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the really powerful pieces of the tool. And I think there are a couple things about it. Speaking to different districts around the country, there's going to be some different applicability depending on the way that state and local rules and regulations are set. For some of our California clients, being able to visualize open enrollment is this tremendously powerful tool. For folks in Pennsylvania or Ohio or states that might have much more restrictive open enrollment rules, that maybe isn't the most valuable piece. But where we work in California a lot, when you look at these heat maps, you can see the ways in which different buildings, just in a quick visual piece, by the differentiation of color and the location of those students, you can see popularity of schools, relative popularity of one type of program for another. And it doesn't require spreadsheets and pivot tables and all that. You literally just pull up the map and plot those students by their school, and you can take a look at it. And a general applicability, understanding where your students are and where your boundaries fit is critical in understanding the capacity usage of your buildings. One of the things that we can see is almost instantaneously the number of students and the capacity enrolled at any given building, the relative geographic size of that catchment area, and how that affects those students. So really quick questions about things like transportation distance to elementary and middle schools in a lot of states, or swing areas that maybe have gone back and forth between one school or another over the years as districts attempt to balance those things, create almost instantaneous visual identification. And apart from that, we present all of this information, and we as these people sitting in the office can help districts understand what we think they might need. But actually, one of the most powerful things for us is to see the districts themselves come up with creative, intuitive, and sometimes really important ways of using the mapping tool. One of the things that I think we're really proud of is how several districts in West Virginia this year used the mapping tool during the COVID pandemic to try to help their students. There are a great number of students in some of these districts that are internet insecure. We actually were able to pull the students' internet security information from their student information system. Did they have access to home Wi-Fi or not? And therefore, were they capable of doing remote learning in their own homes? Map those students and actually come up with heat maps that showed where in the district there might be areas of high concentration of internet insecure students. The districts actually then drove their Wi-Fi equipped buses into those neighborhoods using those heat maps, parked those buses, and allowed those students who otherwise might have just been dropped out of the education portal for the second half of last school year, and allowed them to do remote learning during the pandemic. Ideas like that don't always come from us. We want to be the partners of these districts, but the districts themselves sometimes come up with these really creative, dynamic ways to show how we can use our tool to not just help central budget planning, but actually to help those kids who are trying to learn become better learners and higher achieving students.
I love that story at the end about the mobile buses. Those are things that I've had conversations with districts on over the last several years, and then again, COVID has been rough, but I do believe there are so many positives that will come from it because the light was shined on areas that really needed some extra attention. Same story. It's so interesting, Zach, that you brought that up because I just saw an article in the Pittsburgh area, still 2 hours or so from me, but districts that are just extremely rural, which is probably very similar to what some of those districts in West Virginia that are just saying they've had students that haven't had internet access, or they don't have internet access daily, just because of where they live. So being able to reach those students is critical. And again, this is a benefit of bringing just your normal district boundaries, bringing the information to light. Now, the other thing we'll hit on now is, you had a phrase earlier, money follows students and teachers follow the money, right? Let's talk about how the projections really play into that. No one is saying that teachers follow money, right? We all know that teachers are in it for the kids, but there's a practical purpose to what Zach is discussing. So Zach, explain that and how understanding the future 5-10 years out allows us to prepare for that as a district.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, I know Justin talked earlier about the importance of being practitioners, and this is something that I'm super passionate about. I've done a lot of boundary work over the last few years, but one of the major things that I've done that I did at Portland Public Schools was I was the budget director for the curriculum side of the house, which meant that almost 3 months of my year was dedicated towards informing what's usually called like the staffing committee at a lot of districts, something like that. The group of mostly educators and some operational people who are responsible for figuring out how you're going to staff your buildings any given year. That's in almost every, in fact, in every district in America, that staffing cost is the most important single cost in school districts. It runs from 65 to 80% of every school district budget in America. And it's determined almost entirely at all public schools in America by the number of students who are going to be in those seats. Those state and federal funding formulas all follow the students. So when Justin says the money follows the students, that's what we mean. In each state, somewhere between $8,000 and $15,000 follows those students into those buildings. That rolls into central coffers. And then the folks in that central office are responsible for sitting there and figuring out what's our student to teacher ratio? How many special programs do we have? What do we do with libraries? What do we do with PE? All of the things that are critically important to a curriculum plan, but need to follow the number of students in those projections. And those projections face a time crunch because most districts in America are usually going to be submitting their actual students for the current school year to the state sometime around October or November. To hire teachers, you need to be starting that process by January for the following year, which means you really only have about 2 to 3 months in most districts, November and December, which includes the holidays and all this other stuff, to gather all that information about how many students we're going to have, make sure it's accurate so we don't end up owing the state or federal districts money or other districts in the state money back. That's a headache for every CBO or CFO who's ever dealt with that. And so they're incredibly reliant on getting accurate and sensible enrollment projections in that very tight time window. In small districts, that means someone like the CBO is doing it. And in huge districts, you're dealing with the bureaucracy of a large group doing that. So what we do is we provide these enrollment projections. Again, we have almost 20 years of experience doing so, working with large and small districts, some as large as 200,000, some as small as 500 to 800, providing those enrollment projections so districts can comfortably say, we know this brand, we know these consultants, we know how these projections are going to come in, and we can feel confident in going to the state with our enrollment projections, going to our budget and staffing committees with a dollar amount to say, here's what we can afford for staffing the next year. Let's go ahead and start the planning process.
Oh, that's awesome. And so we've covered a lot today when we look at, just what is enrollment analytics, how the consulting components play into that. We peel back some of the layers into the two key aspects. And we just want everyone to understand the value that's being brought. Having the ability to know the transparency and understand the future of where you're going is a really key component. And it's so interesting to me, who has been doing this for 6 years, and I focused on the SIS and what's happening in the classroom. After getting to know Zach and understanding what this brings to the table, I admit I have been completely naive to all of the things that come into preparing someone like me who was a teacher to have a curriculum, to have the kids in my room. Maybe there's charter networks within your organization, meaning, you're not partnered with them, but they are in your district. And that's what Zach's saying. When, the money follows the kids, they might come to your district, but you might be sending it somewhere else because they're enrolled somewhere. It's just really opened my eyes to the complexities of all of that. And like as I said, I have been completely naive to that. So Zach, I'll hand it to you just for a wrap up, final thoughts before we call quit on the show today.
Yeah, no, we've been really proud of the tool that we built as an independent piece, and we're really excited to be part of the PowerSchool system going forward. I think that there's a lot of powerful dynamic analytics, and I think to what Justin was just saying, we don't hold a grudge to the folks who don't see that back of the house piece. It's sort of the sausage being made is a lot of what's happening on the back end. And I think that we talk about things like an enrollment tool, and people probably think, oh, this is for the enrollment and transfer team to just get the kids in and out of the buildings. And I think that one of the things we're really passionate about is demonstrating how applicable this is to huge swaths of a district office, people working in state education offices, things like that, that understanding the patterns, history, future, location of these students is really critical to the fundamental functioning of a district. And the more we can get that idea integrated into things like curriculum planning, into transportation planning, into the facility work that's being done, and bringing those people together, maybe even within districts who might not talk to each other, using our tool as that unifying force, I think is one of the things that we're most passionate about, and really looking forward to as we grow as part of the PowerSchool ecosystem, really pushing that forward. And I look forward to being a part of that as we go forward.
Yeah, breaking down silos. It's something
Absolutely.
you can talk about at any level in the district. At the district, we were just talking about how this can really unify individuals to make sure that we're all on the same page, and that's the end goal, right? We
Yep.
have to be able to serve the kids, provide them the best educational experience that they can have, and whether we want to admit it or not, the money comes first. Once we know where the money goes and we understand where our resources are allocated, then it's about the delivery. So
Absolutely.
we want to thank you all so much for joining the show. If you're interested in more information, please check out powerschool.com. There's a lot of stories. As Zach mentioned, one of the cool things about the product is districts come up with unique ways to use it that we never thought of. Who would have thought enrollment analytics would be used to map out Wi-Fi? Right? It's just cool ways to use the resources that you have. So check out our website, see that information. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Let us know what you think. Give us ideas for our next show. We thank you all so much for joining us. And until next time, take it easy.